And this, my little pretties, is Mclaren's 540C. Everything about this car is huge. The price. Let's start with the price. $325,000. $325,000 plus on roads. There's a whole bunch of accessories you can get too. This car will lift itself up. The engine is 3.8 90-degree twin turbo dry sump, 32 valves with double overhead cams and variable valve timing. The max revs are 8,500. That's just extraordinary. From this 3.8 litre twin turbo engine, you get 397 kilowatts and 540 newton meters. But here are some really interesting figures. The dry weight of this is 1,350 kilograms. The body structure is a Mono 2 cell, but Mono 2 makes it slightly easier for you to get in and out. It'll go 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.5 seconds. It'll go 0 to 200 kilometers an hour in 10.5 seconds. But here's the amazing thing, it'll go from 100 kilometers an hour to 0 in 34 meters, taking just 3.1 seconds. It'll go from 200 kilometers an hour to 0 in 4.9 seconds and will take just 138 meters. It claims a combined 11.1 litres per 100 kilometres, and do you know what? We're actually achieving that. Remember, this is a 325 grand car that gets to 100 kilometres an hour in 3.4 seconds. We've got a 7-speed seamless shift, double clutch gearbox, and double wishbone adaptive dampers back and front. That's why this thing handles like it's on rails. It has ABS, traction control, ESC, and launch control. We have Pirelli P0s with 225-35R19s at the front and 285-35-R20s at the back. So this car costs money to keep on the road. Go to a track and you're going to shred those tyres in an afternoon. This is the only trunk control I can find. I don't doubt there is another one, but this is the only one I can find. And that gives you access to a trunk that will take 2 good-sized bags. And when I say good-sized bags, I mean weekend-sized bags, soft totes. They won't take 2 hard cases, or at least it didn't take 2 of my 2 hard cases. And doesn't this look pretty lit up? Opening the doors is easy. There's just a little pad here. You can put your hand right through this whole thing. The window drops down and the door opens up to reveal this luscious cabin. And inside, these orange touches just look sensational. You clip the seatbelt into the top of the seat and you can tilt it forward to get into the little parcel shelf at the back. But it's just as easy to chuck your bags over the top. The cabin is just delicious. There are touches of orange on the seats, in the stitching, in the seat belts, and here on the lower dash. On the road in nano mode, you've got no idea how easy the 540C is to drive. It's just like grandma's hatch. This car was conceived by a fiendishly clever person who decided that they'd make it foolproof to drive. It's got a 7-speed automatic transmission. It's a double clutch, so the changes are unbelievably fast. The sound from that high-pitched screaming V8 is just amazing, just amazing. We're going through a tunnel in a minute and I'll try and wind the windows down just to give you some idea of what it sounds like. It's not that deep visceral note that you get from, say, an Aston Martin Vantage or something like that. It's not without its drawbacks though. There's no Apple CarPlay. And you know how I feel about no Apple CarPlay. The other thing is, the USBs are here in the glove box. And as you can see, you can't really get at that while you're driving. The steering is near psychic. And because of that 80 kilo tub that everything on this car is bolted to, is so light, and the materials that the car's made from are so light, it feels light to drive. And with the various drive modes down here in your command center, you can change exactly how you want the car to feel on the road. Now, those tyres, 19 inch in the front and 20 inch in the back, have just a smear of rubber over them, just 35 millimeters of sidewall, even a slight road imperfection. Just the sound is just alarming. Now, coming around this corner now, there's no lean in this car, even in nano mode. Now, let me just see. Put it manual. Really hear very much, I'm afraid. Now, there's no manual option in this car, so there's no version that has a clutch. The cabin is absolutely plush. It is just a thing of beauty. Just on a side note, that's one thing you've got to watch out for. The window buttons and the door open button are right near each other. And luckily, when the door button is activated, if you're at speed, it won't open the door, luckily. Other than that, the Mclaren is just completely normal. It's got a glove box. It's got some cup holders. It's got a center console. And you can even, if you want, put a couple of soft overnight bags in the front for a weekend away. And at the launch of the 600 LT, so the long tail version, McLaren made a great big song and dance about being able to use these cars practically. Now I know why. Because this is one of the very few supercars with a usable boot. So there's plenty of room if you do decide that you do want to go for a weekend away. Now, while we're on the highway, this cabin is so quiet, relatively speaking. The barking of the engine does get a bit wearing on the nerves after a while. The controls for this car are so simple. They really are simple. The command center on this rather small 7-inch LCD screen allows you to manipulate most of the controls that you're going to need regularly. The steering wheel is kept clutter-free. Down behind are two paddles. One does cruise control, not active cruise control, I might add. The other one goes into the menu on the other side of the driver's binnacle. There's just two screens. There's no conventional dials in this car. They are all LCD, racing style readouts, and it gives you just the information you want. There's no flummery, there's no rubbish readouts of God knows what that you're never going to need to know. It's just trip, fuel consumption, tacho, speed. Also, the speed limit is displayed, but I noticed over the last 3 or 4 days that it does come and go. So it's not always there, and it's also not always accurate. It gives you the external temperature, so I know now that it's currently 26 degrees here in beautiful Sydney. And I've used a third of a tank of petrol. Also, in that gauge cluster, it tells me how far to empty, and it actually works it out on your current driving style. So if you drive like a knob, it'll go from 600 kilometers out of the tank all the way down to 100. And I'm guessing your track fuel consumption is going to be pretty awful. But around town, with a combination of highway stints such as this, I'm managing to get about 10 to 11 litres per 100 kilometres. And the thing is, I got to feel that this car was very, very usable very, very quickly. There was no need for me to get used to anything. It all felt so normal. I got in, pulled the door down, and it felt just like any other car to drive. I mean, most supercars you have to muscle around with the will of the gods because they are just so heavy and so awkward and so awful. This isn't awful at all. This is superb. I like the fact that it's got these beautiful Mclaren swooshes all over it. I like the fact that everything that you see and touch feels like quality. Well, for $325,000 it would want to feel like quality. Oh, that little beep's just reminded me. Just down here is the control for the mirrors. Bizarrely, it's also the control for the surround sensors. But, you know, hey ho. The rest of the controls are perfectly normal. You might want to look down here. On the center console, there is no gear select as such, just a series of buttons. And the buttons are such that they're laid out, they're big, they're square, you can't miss them. But there's no park. So you just leave it in drive and turn the engine off. The car puts itself in neutral and turns the handbrake on. If there is one failing, it is the instruments and settings contained within the center LCD is too small, and it's in portrait mode as opposed to landscape, so the real estate feels quite crammed. Even though all your essential information is there, I can see that I currently have a satellite within range, and my phone is connected, and it's got Bluetooth, and it now has 2 bars worth of reception. I can also go back to, with the Mclaren symbol, I can go into the main menu. I am going to rate Mclaren 540C Coupe at 9.5 out of 10, my highest ever score. On those fantastic roads yesterday in Wiseman's Ferry, on that awful rough road, this thing was spectacular. No matter how rough the roads got, it didn't matter. Mclaren 540C just looks spectacular. And it has a friendly look. You take a Lamborghini and it has those aggressive lines, those awful, aggressive, sharp lines that just look mean and angry. This looks friendly and lovely.
And that's it. That's all from the Mclaren 540C. Possibly the best car I've ever driven. It's arguably the best looking. I am 100% in love with this car.